on this upcoming election. And so a lot of good information that had gone forth. Um, we also had Ms. Johnson, who's the president of the Urban League, to spearhead the discussion. Had a very good discussion actually about some of the pros and cons of redistricting. We also talked about some of the new laws and rules that would regulate how district lines are drawn, and particularly about gerrymandering and how that process can play a important part as far as determining um, particular representatives for particular districts. And so we had a real good discussion with them, and we do applaud them for including us, excuse me, here in the Middle Georgia area as far as getting the word out. There were a series of meetings that we talked about on our previous shows that were held here around the city of Macon, and people were able to give their input about various things about redistricting and how the process takes place. We do know that the census is a very important part of what happens as it relates to redistricting. And so as we did earlier in the year, in the past year, we were trying to get our community to make sure they participated in this year's census, because anything that happened from this year's census, there's no way to change that until 10 years from now. And 10 years is a long time to wait for some type of change that might be immediate. And so the census was very important. We hope that our people did their part by filling out their census reports. On our last show, we also were talking about evictions and the eviction moratorium as relates to landlords and tenants. And so that will be the topic of discussion today. We'll have a guest that will come on and get more in depth about that. That's a very important issue, for we know it affects millions of people all across the country as it relates to being evicted. And there's a form that we're going to mention later on in the show that individuals should have filled out prior to not paying or making rent payments. I think we touched on some of our previous shows how individuals just felt that since that moratorium was in effect, that it was just effective immediately without filling out any type of form, but just indicating that you couldn't pay your rent. But that was, far from the truth. And so we're going to have someone here today that has been affected by this personally. And there's so many people across the country that are being affected simply by not knowing the proper way to fill out that information as it relates to your rent being paid or not being paid. We have to make certain we follow the rules and the regulations, because the courts will ultimately make the decision as to if a landlord is able to evict a particular person. So we want to make certain that you're up to speed on that information and that you know how to go about proceeding when it comes to this moratorium about evictions. I also want to touch more about COVID-19. COVID-19, as well as the Delta variant, continues to plague our communities all across the state and all across the country. Every hospital, basically in the Middle Georgia area, is overcrowded due to COVID variant patients. We couldn't emphasize enough the importance of getting a vaccine, and because it's been a political discussion and a political debate, many people have not done so. And so the virus has continued to plague our city and to plague our communities and even our schools. But we know our children just started back to school just a few weeks ago, and we know that they're now out for a couple of weeks for quarantining to make certain that this this Delta variant kind of dies down a little bit prior to them going back into the school system. And once again, we'd love to hear your take on how the Delta variant has affected your family or affected your children by going back to school. And so we'd love for you to give us a call here at the radio station. And of course, you can reach us at 478-250-1444. Once again, that number is 478-250-1444. Call in and let's have a discussion as it relates to the Delta variant and how it's affected your family during this pandemic. Also, there have been some changes through the CDC. They've made some adjustments as things have gone along, as the numbers continue to climb. As far as mask mandates go, there are a lot of states who are actually implementing having masks being worn, even though some of the governors have taken their own approach to that. And school systems have seen the bulk of what this does by not implementing a mask mandate. And so those numbers are very influential as to how they will proceed as to wearing mask or not wearing mask. And so it's very important that we stay on top of this Delta variant. The surge has been a lot greater than it has been in the past. And so we've really got to pay close attention to that. Also, just a couple of days ago, September 11th, we commemorated those who lost their lives during September 11th, a very crucial time in American history, where the Twin Towers were attacked, as well as the Pentagon. And we celebrated by actually remembering those who have lost their lives due to the activities that occurred during September 11th. And there have been commemorations all across the city to give homage to our first responders, our firefighters, our policemen, who were very diligent in their approach during that time, 20 years ago, when we were struck unexpectedly here on our own U.S. soil. And so kudos goes out to everyone who participated in the various celebrations that were held across the city. Terrorism, of course, played a major role in what happened in September, during September 11th. And it's been a lot of controversy as it relates to how the United States and the president's administration handled the exiting of Afghanistan, a longstanding war that the U.S. has participated in, and the Biden administration has gone in and removed all troops and actually left Afghanistan. And of course, you know, some of the negativity that formed around that was the fact that they left a lot of equipment behind, even though the federal government has said that those particular items were dismantled in such a way that they couldn't be used by our enemies. But there's still a lot of controversy surrounding that as to why we left as much equipment behind as we did, as well as American citizens. And so there's a lot that's been taking place, and there's a lot that we have to do as citizens. We have to do our part to make sure that we live in a very safe community, in a very safe environment. And so if you like to even comment as it relates to how the present administration has handled the Afghanistan situation, you can call in as well here at the radio station at 478-250-1444. And I'm going to give that once again for our listening audience who may be listening by radio and not by Facebook. That number is 478 250-1444. Also in the city of Macon, a lot of money that's coming to the city. Will that money be appropriated in its prospective places as far as who will get their share of, I believe, somewhere close to $177 million, which is a lot of money to come to our city. And of course, that a lot of that money is yet to be distributed in the various areas that it should go to. And so we got to make sure we stay on top of our commissioners and state representatives and kind of talk the talk about our communities and what they stand to gain from these monies, and how you can get involved as far as seeing how things play out as it relates to that. And so these are some of the topics that are hot topics, particularly now, all across the city of Macon and Middle Georgia. And so we hope that even though we're in a pandemic and many people aren't attending meetings, a lot of the meetings are virtually held, but there are some in-house meetings are being held. And I know that some people are leery about attending those meetings simply because of COVID. And so they want to kind of stand by and kind of watch things from a distance. I see I've got some comments here. We're begging everyone that can to get the COVID vaccine as soon as possible to help stop the spread of the disease and death. That is correct. There are so many people here that in the Middle Georgia area that many of us know that have lost their loved ones due to COVID and the variant. And so it's been a very concerning issue for many in the community because these situations hit so close to home. There's so many people that we know locally that have been affected in an adverse way. They actually have lost their lives. And so it is a very serious time that we're dealing with. It's some very serious issues that we're faced with. And so we've got to do our part to help alleviate the spread and to do what we can to abide by the CDC guidelines to make certain that everything that we do is helpful and not harmful to others. And so that's left up to each and every one of us as everyday citizens here in the Middle Georgia area. President Westbrooks is now joining us, and I'm going to let her talk about our guest that's going to be joining us today. And as I mentioned, we'll be discussing today some of the eviction laws as it relates to the moratorium being lifted, as it relates to evictions and some of the people that have been affected by it. Also, I want to go ahead and let you know that if you want to join the NAACP, you can join by writing us. You can write us by the Macon Bib, NAACP, Post Office Box 6452, Macon, Georgia, and that zip code is 31208. And for adults, it's only $30 a year to join, and for youth, it's only $15. And so help give us support that we can help keeping things in order for you and fighting for justice for everyone in the community. President Westbrooks, welcome to the show, and I'd like for you to chime in and talk a little bit about the moratorium as it relates to evictions. That's been a hot topic for us. Of course, we've gotten some numerous complaints about individuals that have been affected by the moratorium.
Yes, we're supposed to have a young lady that's supposed to be calling in today. Basically, I spoke with her earlier, and actually, at the same time, whenever someone makes any type of complaints, we have to get both sides of what happened in pulling court documents. And so I think basically and this is going to be a topic for a minute. I'm sure something that it's going to be an ongoing topic, because, people are actually starting, some people think that people are just starting to be evicted, but that's not the case. People have been being, people have was starting to be evicted at, last year. And so what's happened is that, we just have not, our community is not educated enough as to what's available, what they can apply for, what's available to them. And for example, the Georgia Rental Assistance Program, when you talk to people still, they don't even know what you're talking about.
Wow.
And then a lot of people are going into the courts and not having this Form 130. You remember the attorney that was on the show from the Georgia Legal Services, he had mentioned about this Form 130,
right,
which is the form from the CDC. And that form has to be signed when you go to court in order to keep you from being evicted. It does not say that you don't have to pay your rent, but it keeps you from being evicted. Now, people are not familiar with that, Mr. Dumas.
Wow.
People they didn't know that they had to, only thing they knew is that they were stepping into the courtroom just thinking that they couldn't be evicted because this moratorium was in place. And so that's what they were thinking. And so we got people who have actually been evicted for this very same reason. And it's a hardship. And the young lady that I was speaking to today, I got some information after I spoke with her, kind of that shed some light on some concerns that I had. And I actually asked the property man, when I spoke to the young lady for the property manager side, she was the district manager, and I asked her why, if you know that someone is behind in their rent,
right,
why wouldn't you help these people? Why wouldn't you apply on behalf of these tenants when you can, this is basically almost a sure thing that you can get your money. And I don't know if you remember me, Mr. Dumas, talking about it in the very beginning, where you have landlords and tenants that have conflict,
right,
and they they may not like the tenant for some reason. Then you don't help that tenant because you don't like them.
Just dislike them.
And so, I think this is what's happening in a lot of it. That you have tenants that are not getting the help they need because they don't really know what to do. And then the people that know what to do, they're not helping them because they got some type of issue with them. And I think that it has to be something done a different way, especially if tenants are not aware that they can apply for this information. I know some tenants have basically sent out a lot of the tenants send like an email out or a letter out to all the people that live in that particular apartment complex or whatever. They've communicated with them, but a lot of time people still don't pursue it. So with this young lady, my concern is that, she went to court, she answered the complaint, and she went to court, and basically in looking at her complaint, she didn't have anything on there about her being behind because of not being able to pay her rent, which was some of the reason. But her concern was that they were not making the necessary repairs. And that was one of the things I think you remember we talked about that too. Also,
Right.
if your landlord, your tenant, is having issues with getting repairs done, you know, a lot of people just stop paying rent. But that the attorney said that you just don't need to stop. You gotta put your complaint in writing. Your complaint in writing. As far as what you're concerned. This young lady was telling me earlier that she was on the news a while back in reference to the condition of her apartment. But when I spoke to the property manager, the district manager today, she said that they did all of her repairs. So I really don't know what really happened, whether they did the repairs or whether they didn't do the repairs.
Or if they did them after.
If they did them after she went on the news. But then at this point, her rent was already behind. And that was one of the reasons I asked the property manager, the district manager, why didn't the property manager assist her if she knew she was behind? But the kicker is that her child has COVID. So she's homeless, and her I forgot how old she said she was. She's a small child, has COVID. So you have a mother who's homeless with a child who has COVID. So this is one of the reasons why those guidelines was put in place, for the very reason that they didn't want someone to didn't want someone to be evicted because of them not being able to pay, because for the simple fact you had people that lost their jobs due to COVID that came down with the virus. Or you had the businesses that just basically shut down because of people getting sick. People either had to take a reduction in their hours because the children went to virtual learning, so they had to stop. So this is why this was put in place. But I see a question that we have here. It was asking about where do you apply, where do you get the Form 130. So at this point, the Form 130 is no good because the Supreme Court has removed that from. They're saying that the CDC is no longer, that's not in place anymore, the Form 130. But if she would have had that form when she went to court on August the 16th, then she would have not been evicted, because the Supreme Court didn't overturn this until August the 26th. That's when they made the announcement. But our people have not been familiar with, you can actually go in the courtroom the same day and hand the judge that Form 130, and you wouldn't have been evicted. But people didn't know that.
Wow.
So people are thinking that because they've lifted this, they've lifted the moratorium, that you are able to be evicted. Now people have been being evicted, and that's why people need to understand that folks are not just starting to be evicted.
No.
If you go down to Bibb County Magistrate Court, and they were filing evictions, and they were still having court, you were evicted if you didn't have that form.
Wow.
If your rent was behind. Because I'm saying we have several cases where people were evicted, didn't have anything to do with their rent. Their money was paid, and it was just differences that the landlord and the tenant had, and they were actually evicted from their home. Now we have a case that we are looking into, where I've already investigated it and found out that the landlord did not file. They gave them notice to move, but they didn't file anything in the courts.
Wow.
So they just they were at work, and when their children called them from home and said their belongings were being put outside. So they were actually legally evicted because it didn't go through the courts. And I just want to know what sheriff that came out there and did that without a court order.
Wow.
And so,
so there are a lot of things that are going on that's not through regular procedures. They just
they're not through regular procedures. And so I'm just hoping that that when these people go before the courts that they're being listened to. I really we got to get a schedule. Before COVID, we actually sat in on a lot of these cases because there were some issues with people being evicted, and it was just not a one or two people. It was basically almost a whole community that was being wrongfully evicted. We did eventually get that straight, but we got to get back and start sitting in the courtroom and listening to these cases, because we can always get a transcript of what went on in the court, but it's nothing like sitting there listening to it yourself. But I do know that we are going to be asking the county. We're going to be submitting a proposal to the county. We reached out to some other organizations or other agencies and asking for monies for this reason, because we deal with a lot of eviction, not just before COVID, but because of the Georgia rental assistance is taking so long in issuing the money.
Wow.
In issuing the money, that's the issue. People need immediate relief, immediate help right now. And so if we get this money, it will be evaluated case by case, because you gotta make sure that people are not just taking advantage of the system and they didn't get money from somewhere else, and then they coming here and getting money, they going somewhere else and getting money. So, but people are really in need. It's just a bad situation. People are still out, just like now the kids out of school. You got parents who had to stop working,
right?
Because their kids, depending on the age of their children, they had to stop working. So it's just a bad situation. But we just gotta, I don't know how you deal with that with a whole community, but these landlords got this personal conflict with these tenants, to the point where you won't help get money to pay their rent. It's just ridiculous.
It really is. Well, we've run out of time, but certainly, as you mentioned, we'll be discussing more on our other shows about this, because it's a growing problem.
You have been listening to the live broadcast of
So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on next week. Have a great evening.
Come join us next Monday at 4:00 p.m. on 980 WDDO.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of the Glory 980 AM, the Glory Media Group, LLC, WDDO AM, its staff, management, or advertisers, but are the views and opinions of the participants of the broadcast.
Anybody come to praise the Lord tonight? Put your hands together. The Bible says it's a good thing to give thanks and praise to the name of the Lord. Anybody know he's worthy? Shout for joy. This is the day. Oh, come on. It's real easy. Oh, clap your hands. Say amen. Lift your voice. Shout for joy. This is the day that the Lord. The psalmist said, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. All ye lands, shout the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. You ought to praise him while the blood running over your back. Yeah, come on. have breath. Why don't you praise him? Praise him, praise him, praise him, praise him. Your life depends on praise him. Do you want to praise him? Do you want to praise him? You got a right to praise him. Praise him, praise him. While the blood running warm in your veins. Praise him. Praise him. You ought to praise him. Did you come to praise him? Did you come to give him glory? Did you come to give him honor? Come on. Come on. You ought to praise him. Say amen. Lift your voice. Shout for joy. This is the day that the Lord has made. Come on and celebrate. Praise him. Praise him. Praise him. Praise him. From the rising of the sun to the going down of the same.
Hey everybody, this is Dottie Peoples. When I was hit by a tractor trailer on 285, I immediately called 1-800-INJURED, the Bethune Law Firm. And attorney Terrence Bethune said, "Don't worry, Dottie, I got this." If you're ever in a car accident, call 1-800-INJURED, Bethune Law Firm, and they'll tell you too. Oh! I got this.
This is Attorney Bethune of Bethune Law Firm. For over 25 years, my law firm has been helping injured victims in matters of wrongful death, tractor-trailer accidents, and car accidents. We're conveniently located at 2357 Pine Ono Avenue. Remember, after a car wreck, call 1-800-INJURED, the Bethune Law Firm, to get you a big check.
Oh! I got this.
Middle Georgia. Will you help the WDDO 980 family welcome to our Glory Weekly lineup, the Flames of Fire Prayer Ministry?